Hey everyone, this is Chris, Kerbal Space Program, Hard Mode, Episode 12. We're calling, we're calling this a mission, even though it was probably an utter failure. It did net some science, not a lot, maybe, I don't know, 10, if that. I don't know. We had a good theory. What my intent was to make a Apollo-like moon lander, with a command module and a MEM as in Munar Excursion module. So, I mean, basically this was loosely based on the Apollo missions, and this is only what I remember from Apollo, the movie. I think it was Apollo 13, with Kevin Bacon and Tom Hanks. I don't know. I didn't look at any specific designs, so this is just something I came up with based on what I remember from that movie. So what it is it's got the command module, the capsule at the top, right? And then it's got a fuel tank and an engine. And then I also have a stack separator with a one of those plate adapters, and then a docking port. And then on the Lunar Excursionary module, which is just a lander can and some other shit, I have another docking node or docking port, and that connects that to the bottom of the command module thing, right? So we get this into space with one of my modified Ranger launch vehicles, and when we get into space and get into an orbit, or as long as we're, free falling in space, we disconnect the Lunar Excursion module and turn it around and put it on the nose of the command module, and then use the command module's rocket to get us to the moon, and it'll be also our transfer back. All great in theory, and here's me just messing around with the launch vehicle because I had to change it around a little bit. And I didn't really even think of what the fuel needs would be to get the lander down and back, and it's got two of those goo containers, and I think that really did me a disservice when it came down to landing and taking off. But I built this, and I went and tested it, and then came back and did some changes, and it was more of a proof of concept thing, and then I found it probably will work. So then I put the final touches on it, putting like communications antennas and stuff like that. Also, like a life support supply on the lander can itself, so it had more than one day. All right, well, here's the initial test launch, and you can see it's a little wobbly, but it's not bad. It holds together. And one of the test launches, I realized I needed a little bit more delta V, and I put some more motors around the top, and you'll see it in the official launch vehicle that actually went to the moon. It has a little bit of extra stuff there, and that got me to where I need to be as far as thrust to weight ratios and stuff like that, because I have the only 2.5 meter part rocket engine that I have is the orbital one that fits on, it's actually the one that's on the Lunar Excursion, or on the command module itself. So I don't have any heavier lift rocket engines to put onto those 2.5 meter parts. So if you notice, I do have a 1.25 meter part in that mix, and you'll see it when the final launch vehicle is done. This was, like I said, just proof of concept. I just wanted to make sure I could get into orbit, and that everything worked. And in this particular launch, I had to use the motor from the land module, the rocket motor from the lunar module, to get us into a circularized orbit, because I didn't have enough fuel in the launch stage. But I fixed that. Like I said, I docked just to see if it would work, and it did. So I said, well, it's working, and all I got to do is just get it to the moon, and then we can land, get back up into orbit. We'll get a circularized orbit around the moon. We'll connect with the rendezvous with the command module, then we'll just shoot back to Kerbal. But it wasn't that easy, and it took on a life of its own, and it was not very good. So I'm gonna add that in, and I'll add the final launch stage here. So what you're seeing now is basically the transfer to the moon. I forgoed the launch, and you'll look at the back end of this rocket. It has smaller tanks and some motors there. That was part of the addition that I made to the rocket, to the Ranger rocket. I needed just that extra punch with the thrust to weight ratio. That I needed those that extra stage there. So actually it worked out well, because this stage actually burned me to the moon. So I did my Munar insertion burn, and then I was able to ditch the stage. And you know, I don't care to leave the stages up in space, and I'll take them out manually. But what I always try when I can to let them deorbit themselves. So right now we are just about ready to disconnect and do this swap over. Alright, so we dropped the launch stage, then we just dropped off that adapter. If you don't do it with the adapter and the docking port, then what happens is the decoupler gets stuck onto the lunar module, so you can't use it. Yeah, I had to do that just to make it so it would work, so I could completely disengage, so that the lunar module and the command module could assemble back together. So obviously here is just the connection. And oddly enough, I didn't have to have a Kerbal inside the lunar module for this to happen, for this to take place. It didn't stop me from connecting to that module, because maybe because it's not an unmanned part, it's normally a manned part, that even if it doesn't have a connection back to Kerbal Space Command, or it was still connected to Kerbal Space Command during this operation, which I doubt it was, because I think we're out of range. But something I'll have to pay attention to next time. It didn't even dawn on me to do that, to see if I couldn't connect, because I have tried to connect to the station, or tried to dock with the station, and if it's not manned and it doesn't have a connection back to Kerbal Space Command, it won't let you dock with it for some reason. And I think I pointed that out in one of the other videos, which didn't make sense, but it seems here that it doesn't matter, because or it doesn't happen because maybe it's normally a manned part, crewed part, Kerbaled part, I don't know. All right, so we're at the moon now. We're just coming out of our sphere of influence change. I'll do a couple final maneuvers here to put us into a tight circular orbit. You know, nothing crazy here. And I cut out some of our travel time here. So we're just about in orbit around the moon. And I think I'm just doing my final insertion burn into that low Munar orbit. And then what I'll do is I will transfer a Kerbal over to the excursionary module. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that it has all the fuel, because I forgot to turn off docking cross feed capable, and I drained the tank of the lunar excursionary module. And also just to swap out the life support so it doesn't have any waste, and it has all full food, water, and oxygen, just in case we get stuck down here for longer than we thought, and we thought we were going to be okay. Now all this stuff adds extra weight, and I did not pay attention to the Delta V requirements, and thus we had a tragedy. But here's me just disconnecting everything, and then we are going to go for a deorbit burn. Now what I had done here is I disconnected the two space vehicles here, and I was going to turn away, but if I used the rocket engine on the lunar excursionary module, it would have kicked away the capsule, and I didn't want to do that. So what I ended up doing is I just ended up turning around, redocking, I was actually just going to nudge this thing forward with the command capsule, but it ended up, it was far enough away that it started the redock sequence. So we docked again, and then what I did was I put some forward momentum through the RCS system and disconnected, and then I pushed back on the capsule to to get some space, although I could have just moved the capsule back originally, now that I think about it. So that was just all flair, all piloting skills and flair. That's all it was. So here's our disconnect now, and we're going to do our deorbit burn. But you just want to get far enough away from the capsule so when you do it, you don't run into the capsule as it comes at you at, you know, a couple hundred meters per second. Nothing special on the deorbit burn. I kind of just did right exactly where I wanted to and made it happen. Yeah, I'm going really fast here. I'm pretty much just, you know, burning out the clock. Ticking down to, I set up a maneuver node like I did in some of the other videos where it kind of tells me the drop dead if I want to get a 0 velocity and how close I want to do that. And that's basically what I did here. But I used it to set it up as an alarm. I was trying to get right inside that crater. And I was just using that maneuver node as kind of an alarm clock and a guide to see how much fuel I'd have to burn to negate my velocity. I ended up using more fuel than I thought, and it turned into a problem. And I should have been not used as many heavy parts as I did. I didn't need to do the goo containers, or at least I didn't need to do 2. Because they are kind of heavy. But we ended up making actually, it was a nice landing. It was just a normal landing, no problems. You'll see that we're kind of aiming for that crater, and you know, nothing crazy happened. We just kind of glided right in, but we came up a little bit short of that crater. You can see the ground scatter coming into effect now. I don't even really know if I jumped back out or looked at the map. I'm not really even sure where we are. We might be in one of the larger craters. I don't remember. And, you know, turn the lights on so we can get some shadow effects. I can see kind of how far away we are. And we touch down. We just have that one solar panel there. We got a couple small ones on the side. While we're talking about the lander, it's just those lander legs. It's got the 2 goo containers. It does have an antenna. And the ladder seemed to have disappeared. I think it got burnt in the destaging or the decoupling. But it did have a ladder at one time, no longer there. And then we just have some, we do some science, we do some samples taking, and we just load it all back into the can here, and we're gonna, you know, take it back, link back up with the command module, and then go back. Thinking about it now, I don't even know if I'd be able to land this, because would be able to get this back into Kerbal or onto the ground, because it doesn't have a heat shield on it. So we, at this point in 0.22, you can't transfer over samples or anything like that. And I know 0.23 was just released today, as in December. What the hell day is it today? December 17th. This was done yesterday, so it was still in 0.22. And you know, you can't transfer the experiments over, so I'm kind of stuck no matter what. Even if the mission was a success, it might not net me the science that I wanted. So anyway, while I'm here, I have some fun, and I do some space aerobatics with this Kerbal, and then we kind of come back, pack it up, and all right, we've had just about enough shenanigans for now. The time is right. Let's launch. We'll get ready to launch. We'll try to rendezvous with the capsule as it comes around the surface of the moon. And all will be well, right? Probably not. This is a Kerbal Space Program video, and I am not an epic pilot whatsoever. I have grand schemes, but skills not so much. So we're going to launch, and we quickly find out that we do not have enough delta V to get into an orbit. I barely get it to 8 kilometers above the surface, possibly. It's tough to remember now. As you can see, there's a satellite there, but I mean, that command capsule's coming around, and you know, we're right on the edge of that crater. And you'll note my heroic save, or tried to save. I tried to get that command module to get to this lunar lander sooner than it was scheduled to go. And if I let it go on its own and connect, maybe I could have gotten a better encounter with it, and I might have been able to save it before it crashed back into the ground. But I am going, basically it's a north-south trajectory on that lander, and it's going up fast and it's going down even faster. So I try to burn, and of course doing that I overshoot very far. I actually overshoot and try to stop. It actually brings down my trajectory for the capsule down. It was a deorbit burn. I would have crashed not long after that if I hadn't fixed my orbit. So there's no chance in rescuing that. I put this capsule back into orbit, and then I enter the lander just to see the ride, and maybe I can use some skills to save the lander can. They are pretty tough after all. They're built for Kerbals. So that did not work, but I would be happy to show you that. Now, I know these lander legs are rather strong, but 100 meter per second strong? Yeah, not so much. So I tried to at least control the capsule, or control the lander can, by making it rotate instead of just hitting hard. And it seemed to work for a little while, and then it just kind of slid and died. But I was able to bring back the command module, so we only lost 1 Kerbal instead of 3. And we'll just have to do better on the next one. But appreciate you guys taking a look at it. Like, subscribe, comment. Check out my other videos, and let me know if you have any questions or you want to see anything. Thanks.